Okay, welcome to Sprint 109 review. Let's get started. So I'll do the sprint statistics. Harpreet will do UI, Adam providers, Tina automate, Joe platform, Suyog documentation, and let's go. So we had 226 PRs merged, and integration test took the lead. And here we see again the 226 PRs merged. We just lowered a little bit there since 2 weeks ago. And here, I believe 2 weeks ago we had test in the lead, but now we're back to bug and enhancement. And there really wasn't any movement here, so it's kind of quiet. And over to Harpreet.
Thanks, John. Hello, everyone. We had total of 59 UI PRs merged across all the UI repos this sprint. Out of that, 29 were bug fixes, 10 enhancements, 8 technical debt, and some cleanup, and so on. I have some of the main highlights here for the bug fixes. So the deprecated Discover Cloud Providers option was removed from the UI. I think the backend was removed in the previous sprint. A fix was made to the code that disables toolbar buttons depending upon the count of items selected in the list to fix an issue with the compare of VMs in genealogy tree. There were some of the formatting and styling fixes made to different parts of the product, such as backgrounds were fixed on container projects, dashboard, alerts, overview screen, some of the edit screens. And in some cases, titles were missing on the edit screens, so that was fixed, and styling was fixed on the action details screen in Control Explorer. And in Reports Explorer, when adding or editing a report, sometimes some of the fields are not available based upon the model selected. That was misunderstood as missing fields, so a note was added to the screen mentioning which fields are not supported for the selected report. Next slide, please. On the enhancement side, there is some work going on to simplify menus in the product. So utilization subtab was moved from Optimize main tab to Cloud Intel main tab. You will be seeing more changes in the menus in the following sprints. Name of the provider column was added to clusters, style, and list views for convenience. Previously, user had to go to each cluster summary screen to see the provider information. In the dialog editors, changes were made to show default value for date time picker fields on the dialog preview screen. On the provider summary screen, it was updated to show compliance details. Previously, you could run a compliance check for a provider, but there was no way to view the history of compliance check or the details. So that was added. And then actually, I'm going to skip next 5 items and jump to the last item. I'll go over those along with the screenshots on next slides. On the V2V side, conversion host wizard was updated to set auth user to root for rev hosts. Next slide, please. And that's the catalog item and catalog bundle list view. So a pattern fly model was added when deleting a catalog item or catalog bundle. That the model now shows the names of the items being deleted, and also it displays the list of items that are currently attached to a service. So on the left, you can see the older version of the prompt. That was just saying whether you want to delete the selected items or not. But now on the right side, you can see a new model that gives more detailed information of the items being deleted. Next slide, please. Some of the list views and detail screens were updated to show actual record IDs of the records being displayed. So some of the screens that were updated were user details screens, saved reports, and VMs list view and summary screens. So as you can see, the ID field was added here in the screenshot. Next slide, please. On the subnet add edit form allocation pools, DNS server and host routes fields were added. These were already present on the detail screen, but were just missing from the form. So as you can see, the last 3 fields on this screenshot, those were added. Next slide, please. A new optional field to provide a name for a new volume was added when restoring a cloud volume backup. Next slide, please. And in the dialog editor, make load values on init field is changed to be an independent field. Previously, it was only visible when show refresh button was checked. Otherwise, it was just hard-coded to true by default. And that's all I have for the UI. Next, on to Adam.
Thanks, Harpreet. So this sprint, Amazon had the most merged PRs, followed by Overt and OpenStack. Actually, I think all the rest of them were basically the same change made to all the other providers, all those that have 1 and 2. We moved to Postgres 10, I believe, and that was just across all the providers. Next slide. On the VMware side, this is actually in core ManageIQ for Save VMs inventory. We saw an issue where VMs actually got new UUIDs, but they kept their EMS ref, so they were the same VM, but we actually duplicated it because we were using the UUID EMS primarily without taking into account the EMS ref. So now what we do is first look for the EMS ref, pick that VM, and then only look to the UUID EMS if we're trying to resolve duplicates. So that was a good fix there. Overt, there was some initial refresher specs refactoring. We're going to be doing a lot of work around improving the Overt specs. There's a lot of duplication and a lot of things that aren't covered. And so this initial refactoring by Martin S. was to remove a good bit of the duplication. On Amazon's side, Alex disabled the new US Gov AWS region by default, so it doesn't show up. Lucy fixed an issue where the timeout for an orchestration stack parameter was getting converted to an integer, and so if it was nil, it was being returned as 0 as opposed to unset, so she fixed that. And Alex also did a lot of work on improving the Amazon metrics capture specs, which was... And next slide, and over to Tina.
Thanks, Adam. Good morning. We had 13 PRs merged this sprint. Jeff Cutter added the ability to pass WS values to the launch Ansible job automate method. This change is very useful for VMs provision via build VM provision request method, where only standard options can be supplied. Lucy resolved an issue, as Adam had just mentioned, Lucy resolved an issue where the timeout value in the service dialogs generated for AWS service orchestration provisioning was causing an issue. The timeout value, when not specified, was set to 0, which caused the validation error later in processing. Lucy changed it so that the 0 timeout is converted to nil. Eric resolved the dialog issue where the dialog values are not being displayed properly. As part of ongoing Automate engine enhancements, Greg removed tags from the dynamic association creation so it doesn't override the engine tag methods. I removed the auto-approve flag when creating a retirement request. This gives users the ability to decide the auto-approval option in the auto-approval state machine. Last sprint, Drew resolved an Ansible service retirement issue where the service resources were getting retired when the service was configured to retain those resources. The fix was backported to Hammer this sprint. And finally, Billy Fitz resolved an email path issue for the cloud orchestration retirement. That's it for Automate. Next slide, over to Joe.
Thank you, Tina. This sprint, 14 PRs were merged in the platform space. Here are the highlights. Advancing the Ruby and Rails version upgrades, Julian continued the work to bump Ruby, while Joe R. and Keenan made progress on the Rails front, with Joe R. removing deprecation warnings. For bug fixes, Keenan addressed a bug in FixOff where it was failing to handle recursive settings. Keenan also fixed an issue where VM swap partitions were being reported as false positives. Next slide, please. For enhancements, Libor made progress on the work he is doing to provide for selecting tenants where the service will be available. And Keenan and Nick C. continued the effort of improving our test infrastructure. And that's it for the platform space. On to documentation.
We had 7 PRs merged in the sprint, of which 6 were bugs and 1 was enhancement. We've updated the action in the service retirement API call in the REST API guide, as well as made a note about it in the release notes as well. And we've added a note about the provision request attribute support for VMware in the methods available for automation guide, as well as in the REST API guide. And that's it for documentation.
Okay, that ends Sprint 109 Sprint Review. The next one is in 2 weeks and on May Day. So we'll see you then. Bye now.